Hi, you're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. Is it me, or have Americans' hearts grown colder? ProphecyNewsWatch.com had an article this week that asked that question. From coast to coast, major U.S. cities are being transformed into war zones, and our politicians seem powerless to stop the carnage. If we can't even feel safe walking down the streets anymore, what's that say about our society as a whole? The riots, the violence that erupted in 2020 have sparked a wave of civil unrest that has spilled over into 2021. And we continue to see incidents of civil unrest on almost nightly basis. For example, over the weekend, rioters in Portland set the ICE building on fire while agents were still working inside. Did you hear about that? No. Hearts have grown cold in this country, so cold that it's only going to get worse. In 2020, we witnessed a spike in crime rates all over the country that has absolutely been unprecedented. In particular, homicide rates are way up everywhere. For example, in New York, homicide rates increased by 45%. In Chicago, the homicide rate increased by 55%. Los Angeles, 38%. Washington, D.C., almost 20%. Philadelphia, 40%. Louisville, homicide rate increased by 70%. Cincinnati, 28%. Detroit, 19%. Cleveland 40, Houston 42, Indianapolis 40, Denver 50, Fresno 64%. And the murder rates have also continued to go up all over the country in 2021. Gun violence continues to spiral out of control in Philadelphia. One of the victims was a 34-year-old man who was shot in the back of the head 3 times and once in the chest just last Saturday, about 7:30 in the evening. It happened in Philadelphia's West Oak Lane neighborhood. Someone out there really wanted to make sure that guy was dead, or he was sending a statement. Unfortunately, the corporate media on the national level rarely talks about such horrific crimes anymore because they've become so commonplace. In fact, one Philadelphia resident used the phrase "every day" to describe the frequency of these sorts of crimes. Kareem Singletary told WPVI that the shootings have gotten so bad that, quote, people are used to it happening every day, end of quote. The reality? There's a very thin blue line between us and total anarchy in the streets. A line that's diminishing as more and more police officers are being charged with crimes that are really mistakes or overreaches. Criminals amp these men and women up and then take them to court for brutality. And police officers across the nation have never been more demoralized than they are right now, with hundreds of them quitting. These days, police officers must put up with being openly mocked in the streets without doing anything about it, lest they risk ending up on the front page of some newspaper. And way too often, police officers are actually becoming targets themselves. For example, a police officer in New Mexico named Darren Jarrett was just gunned down by a drug dealer during a traffic stop. Did you read about that? Did you see it on television? Sickening footage shows a violent criminal, Omar Felix Cueva, 39 years of age, stepping out of the driver's side of his Chevrolet pickup truck with an AR-15 style rifle before firing one shot at New Mexico officer Darren Jarrett over the rear of his vehicle. That's called cold blood. Jarrett, 28, fell to the ground, at which point Cueva walked over to him and shot him several more times, including once point blank in the head. He then took off in his truck on a 40-mile police chase that saw him die in a hail of bullets. In Utah, 2 police officers were just shot in the face during an exchange of gunfire with a criminal. One deputy has lost his eye. Another has been released from the hospital after both were shot in the face. According to Salt Lake City County Sheriff's Office, at 10:29 a.m. Saturday morning, two deputies were performing routine perimeter security when they encountered a man in his 30s on the lawn of the sheriff's office building. Authorities say the man produced a handgun and began to fire at the deputies as they approached him. Both deputies were shot in the face during that exchange. We didn't see this sort of violence on the streets of America back in the 1950s. But now everything has changed. Hearts have grown ice cold all over the country, and people are committing unspeakable acts of violence. One recent story was about a mother that brutally stabbed her three very young children to death. That California mom suspected of killing her three children before fleeing in a stolen car that had a "Blog for Good" sticker on it, or license plate, where she slammed Teen Mom stars for being bad mothers. Lillian Carrillo, 30, allegedly fled the apartment where she suspected of killing her children before their grandmother stumbled across the grisly scene. Carrillo was on the run for several hours before she was taken into custody in the Ponderosa area of Tulare County in Los Angeles, California. That's America in 2021. The fabric of our society is literally being shredded all around us, and the people that are sounding the alarm about a moral crisis are the ones that are considered to be the bad guys. This is not a crisis that we can solve by spending more money or by electing different politicians. The truth is that this crisis is fundamentally about the character of our nation, and the only solution is for millions of hearts to dramatically change. But instead of turning from our evil ways, we continue to run toward wickedness as fast as we can. And that is going to have an extremely serious consequence for all of us. Millions of our young people have absolutely no respect for life. And that's because our entire society has been teaching them to have no respect for life throughout their entire lives. Every single day, the corporate media seeks to stir up even more hate and even more division. And as a result, the violence in our country is going to continue to grow, and it'll become increasingly dangerous to reside in any of our major cities. The question becomes, where's all this coming from? The answer, it comes from the human heart, a heart that is dead to God. Why? Because the culture destroyed the family unit. Because the culture watered down the educational system. Because the culture threw God out in favor of popular musical forms, pseudo miracles, pop star preachers, and lots of glitz and energy. And that's just in the churches. The gospel tells us just how bad we really are. That's why it's unpopular. And that's why the solution is rejected. Instead, we have entertainment, feel-good churches. You can do anything, churches. You are special, churches. God wants you well, churches, with preachers who can make that happen, literally with the snap of their fingers.